Hi, this is John Harcher, and welcome to part 3 of our look at the life of Conan the Barbarian as told in the Numenor Chronicles. Today it's an added section, Conan the Wanderer, as a Cimmerian roams the Hyborian world far and wide as a captain of the guard, outlaw chief, and mercenary who survives massacres, monsters, and even crucifixion. Conan sailed the Valiant Sea for some time before handing over the ship to his mate Ivanos and taking Olivia back to her father in Ophir. The full account of this has been lost, but what is rumored is the old man repented his action and took his daughter back with open arms. He offered the Cimmerian her as his wife, but Conan politely refused, saying she deserved a better life than he could offer, and said he should send word to his old friend Murillo, who'd become a wealthy Brythunian merchant. Conan heard from one of his old acquaintances from his mercenary days that the Queen of Coran, Taramis, was looking for men, so he signed up and quickly rose to the rank of captain of the guard. During his time there, he noticed a change in the queen. Her actions went from benevolent and kind to malevolent and vengeful. One morning after a night of heavy drinking, Conan awoke to find the queen naming a mercenary, Constantius of Shem, as her new consort and trying to disband the army. He shouted to them to stand as they were and announced to everyone this was not the queen. One of the Shemites' men attacked him and was killed instantly. The square erupted into a giant battle, with the Cimmerian killing many men, but he was soon overwhelmed and knocked unconscious. Conan awoke to the sound of a hammer driving nails through his hands and feet into a giant cross. He was far into the desert, out of sight of the city. Once the nails were driven in as far as they could go, the cross was set up, and the barbarian was left to suffer in the sun. All he could think of was vengeance against Constantius. He lost track of how long he was there. As the sun set, he heard the flapping of wings around his head. A large vulture was circling the hanging figure. Eventually, the bird landed on the cross and began tearing at Conan's flesh. The barbarian turned and grabbed the vulture with his teeth and broke the creature's neck with his jaws. Conan looked up after killing the bird to see he'd been watched. A group of desert warriors called Zuagirs had watched him perform the deed. The Cimmerian recognized their leader as Olgerd Vladislav, who had led a band of Kazaki during Conan's time with them. The Zaporozhian hetman told the barbarian he would take care of him, provided he survived getting down from the cross. He had his men cut the structure near the ground, and it fell with a resounding crash, jarring Conan's body. But he survived, and the men pulled the nails out of his hands. The barbarian then took the pliers away from them and removed the ones in his feet by himself. He was put on a horse, but had to wait until they got to camp before he could get a drink of water. Conan spent around 8 months with the desert tribe. Olgerd thought of great plans, with the Cimmerian as his second in command, of pillaging the cities on the outskirts of the desert and gaining great wealth. But Conan thought only of revenge against Constantius and demanded the hetman aid him in this endeavor. Vladislav refused, but before he could attack Conan, his arm was broken and was sent off into the desert, never to be heard from again. There were some legends Olgerd survived to battle Conan later, but these stories are only rumors. Conan rode into Coran with his desert warriors and discovered the truth behind the queen's change. It was not Taramis, but her lost sister Salome, who'd imprisoned the queen and taken her place. The two were twins, but Salome was born with the mark of the witch and sent out in the wilderness to be left to die. But she was rescued and raised to embrace her destiny. She even called upon the demonic Thaug to protect her, but this exhausted her to the point of death. The otherworldly monster emerged from the dungeons, and Conan, aided by young soldier Valerius, ended up destroying it before it could wipe out the kingdom. As a final victory, Conan took Constantius out into the desert and hung him on a cross, leaving the Shemite laughing in horror as he rode away. Conan spent many more months leading the Zuagirs, attacking caravans from Koth and Shem as they made their way to Turan and Hyrcania. This left Strabonus in a vulnerable situation, as his treasury had been depleted from an ill-planned excursion into Aquilonia, which was turned back by a valiant young count, Trostero of Poitou. This weakened state prompted his rebellious son Almeric to try to oust his father once and for all. He sent an emissary to Conan bearing many gifts and asked him to aid him once more. The Cimmerian sent word back that only because of his loyalty to his wife Ysmela that he agreed. Conan came with a contingent of his best warriors. When they arrived at the camp, they found a motley band of, in the words of the chronicler, mercenaries, outlaws, and broken men. He sought out Almeric, and the prince told him that they were not going to attack Koth directly, but try to starve it out of existence by doing raids to the south, on the borders of Shem, Stygia, and the southern kingdoms. They entered Shem and soon took charge of the trade route. In a small market, Conan found an area where women from every land were being sold as slaves. He and his men raided the market and took the women for themselves. Conan's prize was a blonde Brythunian named Natala. She was afraid of the men at first, but the Cimmerian treated her far better than her slave owners had. So she reciprocated the treatment in the evenings, and the two grew fond of one another. But on an excursion into Kush, the army was trapped by the Kushite army from the south and the Stygian army to the north. Almeric led a mad charge into the teeth of the Stygian archers and ended up impaled by several dozen arrows. The army splintered from there, so Conan took matters into his own hands. He put Natala on a camel and set the creature into the desert. They were immediately chased by warriors on horseback, but the barbarian managed to cut them all down while the beast never broke its stride. Soon the camel died and the two were left to continue on foot. For several days they wandered south. Soon their food ran out and then their water. On the verge of exhaustion, Conan prepared to put an end to the poor girl's suffering when Natala spotted a city on the edge of the desert as the sun was setting. The two arrived there as night fell. When entering the gate, they found a dead body. But when they went to get a drink from the well, it got up and attacked them. Conan beheaded it and tossed it into the well. Having polluted one water source, they searched for another. Inside a hall, there was a table full of food and drink. Natala was suspicious, but Conan told her to get her fill, and the two ate and drank. Once finished, they walked the halls once more and found another man, just like the one they saw earlier, but he was alive. Or so they thought. His eyes looked as if he was in a daze. He told Conan beware of Thog, whoever or whatever that was. As they moved through the city, they discovered a Stygian woman, Thalys. She told them they were in the city of Zuthal, and the people existed by taking in the Black Lotus, which left them in a semi-catatonic state. Thog was a demon who lived beneath the city and feasted on those who accidentally called on it. Natala begged to leave, so Conan asked for food and drink for their journey. Thalys insisted they stay and threw herself into the Cimmerian's arms. The barbarian thrust her away, and the Stygian turned her gaze onto the girl. She walked down the hallway, then stopped in fright. When Conan went to investigate, she grabbed Natala and ducked into a secret passage. Thalys was determined to have Conan all to herself. She tied the Brythunian against the wall and began to whip her into submission, but their noise had awakened the demon. Suddenly a shape came out of the dark like a slithering shadow and snatched Thalys. The Stygian screamed for her life, then was silent. Meanwhile, Conan was set upon an army of walking dead Zuthalans. He fought fiercely, but was overwhelmed and ran into the palace again. In the middle of a hallway, a Zuthalan woman pulled a lever, and the floor dropped out from beneath him. He landed in the dungeons where Natala was chained to the wall, with the creature wrapping its tentacles around her. The Cimmerian slashed and attacked the nightmare until it let her go. Then the two battled down the hallway. They fought to the edge of a well when Thog fell in, dragging Conan with him. Somehow the barbarian managed to free himself and pull his body out of the well. He dragged himself back to Natala and loosed her, but his wounds were grievous and bloody. They stumbled onto an empty room with a giant fountain. Conan slumped down as Natala brought him a jug of water from it so she could treat his wounds. As she did, he drank some of it to quench his thirst. Within a few moments, his skin was healed, and he was filled with life once more. They made it out of the city with no one else noticing. Conan made sure he had plenty of supplies with them, and the two headed north. Luckily, within a day, they found a caravan heading east. Once they reached the Turanian frontier, they encountered a band of Zuagers who rejoiced to find Conan still alive. They told him Yasmila was in safety, so he told them to take Natala to her and then take them both back to Karaja. There was a tale that Cassus wedded the Brythunian, but the chronicles speak of them no more after this. Conan spent some time with the Zuagers, then headed to the outpost town of Zambula. It was founded by the Stygians, but taken over by the Turanians. One of his Zuagar companions told him to avoid the house of Aram Baksh, as it was said to be cursed. Conan dismissed his concerns and took a room there. Once inside, he realized the old man's fears were correct. He was attacked by a Darfarian cannibal, but killed his attacker and escaped into the street. At night, the city was taken over by Darfarians seeking new victims. He found a girl running away from a group of them. She claimed to be a dancing girl in the harem of the satrap of the city, and her lover had gone insane due to a love potion that she had given him. After capturing the man for his own safety, the group headed to the temple where she had received the potion to take revenge on the priest. However, once there, she was captured and Conan was trapped in a secret room. Inside, he confronted a giant Kasalan, Baal Teor, who is legendary in the art of strangulation. After trapping Conan's sword with a gigantic magnetic table, he lunges at the barbarian and grabs his neck with his gigantic hands. But the Cimmerian strikes as well and locks his hands around the giant's neck. After what seemed like an eternity, Conan was able to maneuver his thumbs against the Kasalan's windpipe. This staggers him, and the barbarian is able to catch his breath, then snap the strangler's neck. He found the girl dancing among snakes, having been hypnotized by the priest. He killed the priest and found the antidote for the girl's lover. As he prepared to enjoy the girl's company as repayment, she identifies herself as Nefertari, the woman of the satrap Jungar Khan, and the madman was the satrap himself. The two promised him vast riches, but he refuses and leaves town. What he didn't tell them was he stole from the satrap his most prized possession, the famed Star of Korala. It had been an Ophirian treasure, but was lost during a raid. Conan thought about riding to the country and ransoming it, but the chronicles do not say for sure that this happened. There are stories that future alliances were formed during this time. There was also a tale where Conan sought out Murillo and Olivia and gave the jewel to her so she could reclaim her place in Ophir. He would ask for a reward at a later time as part of his future plan. What is known is Yezdegerd of Turan, in his wide-ranging push for an expansive empire, had begun to fragment the Kazaki warriors with numerous raids. The band was ripe for a new leader to arise, and out of the west came Conan. Leading many raids along the banks of the Vilayet, he soon became their leader by sheer force of will. The king then conspired with Jahungir Aga, governor of Khawarizm, the territory that bordered the Zaporozhye River, to plan a trap for the Cimmerian. As bait, they would use a captive, Octavia, the daughter of one of King Numa of Nemedia's most trusted advisors. They would stage a meeting, show her off to Conan, then send word she was on Zapor, an island near the mouth of the Zaporozhye River. But unknown to all, a fisherman had landed on the island and unknowingly set loose an ancient evil. Conan reached the island and found the temple of the Yuetshi, the people of the island. However, Octavia had escaped from the governor, who led his own men onto the island to try to find her. In the temple, Conan found her and battled first a giant snake, then the embodiment of Koastra Kel, demon of the island. It wiped out Aga's men, and the barbarian fought mightily before finding a way to send it back to the hell from which it came. From there, Conan was able to leverage Octavia for his own purposes. There are tales Murillo acted as a go-between, and combined with the fortune from the media and reward from the Star of Kerala, the Cimmerian was able to use that, as well as his reputation among the Kazaki, to weld together disparate tribes in the hills of Afghanistan into a fearsome force that terrorized Yezdegerd in Turan and the leaders of Vendya alike. Here ends this section of the tales of Conan of Cimmeria. The tales described in this section of the Chronicles are told in full in the stories A Witch Shall Be Born, Zuthal of the Dusk, Man-Eaters of Zambula, and The Devil in Iron. Next time, it's Conan the Adventurer, as the barbarian goes from a tribal chief in the east to a pirate captain in the Western Sea, with a brutal civil war in the south in between. That's next time on Valleys of Numenor. Thank you for listening.